Hey guys, it's Hunter. Welcome back to another episode of ASKgufish. Back from NAMM. It was great. I filmed a grand total of 0 videos. Not on purpose, I meant to, but this year, more so than most, I was really busy. Like, I didn't even get to see everything that I wanted to see at the show. I did try to make at least one video. So Patrick Hunter, he's a bass YouTuber. We've collabed a couple of times, told me the video that he wanted to make, and that was every single bass at NAMM. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll do the guitar version of that. I got about 2 booths in before I realized that was a really fucking stupid idea. I don't know if you know this, but there's quite a few guitars at NAMM. Like, I'd consider it a lot, actually. Anyways, that was a bust. Let's just jump right into your questions. I've been waiting so long for your review on the Jersey Star. It's the reason I haven't ordered one yet. Is it coming soon? Yes, I'm editing it now, actually. The demo track, it's the most 80s thing I've ever written. I kind of love it, and I'm also kind of ashamed. I mean, it's to be expected. Look at this fucking thing. It's like the guitar equivalent of tight spandex pants shouting about trickle-down economics. That's what the 80s were all about, right? I wouldn't know. But yeah, I'm expecting to gain a few subs and lose a few more on this one. I'm back from NAMM, but I still suck at editing, but I'm hoping to have it out by the end of the week. Dude, did you see the new Epiphone line? It looks so nice. I am 100% sold on the Epiphone Les Paul Muse in the blue metallic. Dude, this is gonna be a long f***ing video. Strap in, boys, there is a lot to cover. Like, Epiphone f***ing brought it this NAMM, not just in terms of sheer number of new models, but also in terms of intent. Like, as soon as you stepped into the main Gibson room, the desire to make a statement and elevate the brand was evident. And me being a very public Epiphone fanboy, you guys know what I like, and I've gotten so many questions about the new lineup. Alright, so let's talk about it. Basically, the entire core lineup's been revamped, and at the same time, Epiphone's taken the time to reorganize the product catalog into collections, like Gibson. But unlike Gibson, like Gibson has the original modern collections, Epiphone is doing original and then inspired by Gibson, right? Because Epiphone hasn't always been the brand of affordable Gibsons, even though that's partially why I really like them and what they're most known for now. They're actually the older company acquired by Gibson in the 50s. So in addition to leaning into that identity of being the player's instrument, the affordable gateway into the Gibson family brands, they're also emphasizing their own individual identity. Like, that's not all they are. So their original collection includes designs like the DC Pro, which I reviewed last year. Really cool guitar with a ton of different wiring options and cool flame colors, inspired by the Epiphone El Rey double cut, not a Gibson. Then the Inspired by Gibson collection is then split into 2 sub-collections to match the Gibson lineup, original and modern. That's kind of confusing, like you've got the original and then the Inspired by Gibson original, but it makes sense when you're looking at the overall Gibson lineup as a whole. Like, you see the Gibson version, and it's easy to find the corresponding Epiphone, or for a lot of newer, younger players, vice versa. Now, one of the huge talking points is the upgrades over the entire line. Every single new model comes with Grover tuners and a Graphtec nut. Yes, self-lubricating nuts for the win. And in most cases, the humbuckers are now Epiphone Pro buckers, usually a 3 in the bridge and a 2 in the neck, so no more low-quality, cheap ceramics or anything like that. On the original side of things, they've all got CTS pots like the Gibsons, and the moderns, for the most part, have contemporary wiring schemes with features like treble bleed circuits or push-pull pots to split the humbuckers. Not all the moderns have CTS electronics listed on the spec sheet, so I'm not sure if it's across the entire line, but that would be really cool. I mean, I just love how that high level has been standardized across the Epiphone range. No more low-quality nuts. No more low-quality nuts from Epiphone ever again. And of course, they've changed the headstock. I'll get to my thoughts on that at the end. As a staunch defender of the old one, I've been getting a ton of questions about my reaction to that. But so, starting with the Les Pauls, because I'm a Les Paul guy, I fucking love Les Pauls. The flagship on the original side is the 679 Les Paul Custom. All I can say is, finally. This is the Les Paul Custom I've wanted from Epiphone since forever. Mahogany body, mahogany neck with a slim taper profile, and an ebony fingerboard. Deadly serious, the main reason I've never considered an Epiphone Les Paul Custom even used for a mod project is because up until now, they've come with rosewood fingerboards. I know, there's nothing technically wrong with rosewood, but on a Les Paul Custom with that double bound body and block inlays, it doesn't look right to me. And it doesn't feel right either. And that's something I noticed about the ones on the show floor. Sometimes ebony can feel really coarse or dry. These were nice, well-oiled ebony fingerboards. Like, these are proper Les Paul Customs. Unfortunately, no maple cap, which are on the current Gibson Customs, and I would have preferred, but I mean, the ones in the 50s didn't have maple tops anyways, and yeah, it's just a solid, classic, affordable, proper Les Paul custom now. Available in ebony and alpine white, 2 timeless finishes. I mean, to me, as cool as modern finishes are, the Les Paul Custom is still one of the most beautiful guitars of all time. I am so happy these are a thing now, and at under $700 new. So that's the flagship on the original side. On the modern side, it's the $649 Les Paul Modern. The Les Paul Modern is, of course, the flagship on the most recent Gibson USA lineup, and now Epiphone has their own. To be honest, I wasn't fully sold on the Gibson Les Paul Modern. I found it to be more of like a cautious step forward than a truly modern take on the Les Paul, and I thought at $2,800, it was a little steep for that kind of compromise. But apparently it sold well, good for them, I'm happy to be proven wrong. So you've got a mahogany body with ultra modern weight relief, a plain maple top, a mahogany neck, and an ebony fingerboard. The 3 top colors are lifted directly from the Gibson line: faded pelham blue, vintage sparkling burgundy, and graphite black. If there's one thing I did love about the Gibson Modern, it was the 2-tone finish. The colored top with the light sparkle and natural mahogany back, so I'm glad that's on the Epiphone, as well as the Grover locking tuners. That's not to say everything is the same with the Epi as it is with the Gibson. The wiring is slightly different. It doesn't look like there's a pure bypass option, but you do get a treble bleed circuit, so even when you turn the volume down, you don't lose any high end, which I guess is a problem for people that use the volume knob at positions other than 0 and 10. Interestingly, while not on the Gibson line, with Epiphone, there's the Les Paul Modern figured, much like how Fender does with their plus tops. For $50 more, you get a flame maple veneer with your choice of magma orange fade, cafe latte fade, and Caribbean blue fade. Caribbean blue looks unreal in person. Figured still have that natural mahogany back, and it looks so good. Now, one of the defining features of the Gibson Les Paul Modern is that it has a 10 to 16 inch compound fingerboard radius. Comfortable for chords on the lower frets and comfortable for runs and leads on the higher frets. The Epiphone, it's got the standard 12 inch radius. Like, why? That seems like such a no-brainer to keep. That was one of the best parts of the Gibson Les Paul Modern. I mean, as it is, it's still got the asymmetrical neck shape and slight cutaway, so it's a more modern playing experience than a normal Les Paul. I'm just a little disappointed the compound radius didn't make the cut. But that's okay, because there's loads more Les Paul goodness to get excited about. Back to the original collection, there's the Les Paul Standard 50s and 60s. These are super cool because they're the closest Epiphone has ever made to the classic standards they're inspired by. Mahogany bodies with maple caps, mahogany necks, and Indian Laurel fingerboards. Indian Laurel is one of my favorite sustainable rosewood alternatives. It feels very similar to rosewood and looks better than the much lighter Palfaro. The 50s has a rounded 59 profile, the 60s a slim taper 60C. The 50s has 50 style wiring. That's pretty cool. I don't know if Epiphone's ever done that before. There's a good article on the Seymour Duncan website which explains the difference between 50 style and modern style that's worth a read if you don't know the difference. The 50s even has the neck joint listed as a long tenon, which is usually a highly sought after feature because of how uncommon it is. Basically, it's just more of the neck joint wood in the body, and purists love it. And now it's on an Epiphone. The 60s comes in ebony, bourbon burst, and iced tea. Then the 50s comes in metallic gold, heritage cherry sunburst, and vintage sunburst. $599 long tenon gold top Les Paul with a thick neck, CTS pots, and 50 style wiring. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Oh, and no weight relief either, according to the guys at NAMM. So sick. Rounding out the original Les Pauls are the 379 Junior and 399 Special. Both have mahogany bodies, set mahogany necks with 50s profiles, and Indian Laurel fingerboards. The Junior comes in tobacco burst with a single dog ear P90 Pro, while the Special in TV yellow gives you 2 soap bar P90s. The resurgence of flat top P90 equipped guitars is so real. The only surprising thing is that the double cut Juniors, which are some of Gibson's current best sellers, are nowhere to be found on the Epiphone range. Though, as a single cut guy, I'm not really complaining. Back to the modern collection, the Les Paul Studio's been updated. It's still got a mahogany body and mahogany neck like the previous one, but now it's got a slim taper D instead of a C. The fingerboard is now Indian Laurel instead of Palfaro, trapezoid inlays instead of dots, and the humbuckers are chrome covered instead of uncovered, so it looks higher end as well. Wine red, alpine white, ebony, and smokehouse burst. Alnico classic humbuckers with CTS pots and classic finishes. You can't go wrong. It makes sense it's in the lineup. Speaking of classics though, the new Les Paul Classics. I still don't know why the Les Paul Classic is in the modern collection. That's just confusing, but they were cool too. Mahogany body, maple cap, mahogany neck with slim taper profile, splittable open coil zebra Alnico Classic Pro humbuckers, available in ebony, honeyburst, and heritage cherry sunburst. I'm trying to say something about the classics. It's not a model, even on the Gibson side of things, that I really have strong feelings about, but just like the Studios, it makes sense that it's here in the lineup. The classic Warns, though. For 50 bucks less, you can get the same specs in a satin open pore finish. I mean, it just feels so nice. I always feel like satin open pore finishes make less expensive guitars feel higher end than they actually cost. Comes in ebony, heritage cherry sunburst, metallic gold. Yeah, you can get a satin gold top from Epiphone now, and one of my favorites from the entire lineup, Worn Purple. I love this color so much. I'm already thinking of the ways I can mod this into an absolute chug machine because it feels great to play. And I've kind of saved the best for last, and that's the Les Paul Muses. I am so glad I can talk about the Les Paul Muses now. When I saw them at Summer NAMM, I was like, oh my god, how am I gonna keep quiet about these for 6 months? And then when that ad leaked on Facebook for them a few months ago, I was like, can I talk about them now? And Algin's like, yeah, no. So that was that, but they're finally out in the wild now, and I've been so hyped. So the body's made of okami, which is usually more of a Fender thing. Then it has a maple cap. The body's thin and chambered with a belly cut, so it's a lot more lightweight. It's very modern, almost Eclipse-like, while still having that classic Les Paul silhouette. Neck profile is listed as a custom C. To me, it felt very much like a regular C. I guess I need to compare back to back, but it felt very comfortable and familiar. The top comes in Wonderlust Green Metallic, Pearl White Metallic, Radio Blue Metallic, Purple Passion Metallic, Jet Black Metallic, Scarlet Red Metallic, and Smoked Almond Metallic. Each one has a slight sparkle like on the Les Paul Modern, then add black back and sides for that two-tone aesthetic, and transparent speed knobs. They just look incredible. Epiphone have nailed these. This is Epiphone at its best, taking a beloved iconic shape and putting their own original twist and personality on it. Yeah, I love these. I think they're my favorite out of the entire line. And at $4.99, the purple one is screaming at me to throw some Fish influences in there. And they haven't just done this to the Les Pauls. There's also the SG Muse in the same colors at launch, but with a matching back instead of the two-tone color scheme. Mahogany body instead of okami. $4.29. It's nuts. It's absolutely nuts. They look so cool and play so well. I mean, usually the SG doesn't get as much love as the Les Paul, but it definitely does here. And that goes for the SG modern figure as well. Only comes in one finish, trans black fade, but it's got a mahogany body with, get this, a 3/4 inch maple cap with a AAA flame veneer. What the f? A $5.49 Epiphone SG with an actual maple top and Grover locking tuners. It's absolute madness. CTS push-pull pots to split and phase switch the humbuckers as well. Asymmetrical slim taper with a contoured neck heel. 24 frets. I love how Epiphone have just dropped the G400 name as well. It's an SG. We're calling it an SG. The last of the SG moderns is the classic worn P90s. It's basically exactly as the name advertises, mahogany SG with dual P90s, and just like the Les Paul Classic Warns, has the satin open pore finish. What it doesn't say is that while it comes in your expected cherry, it also comes in this stupid cool Inverness green. I don't know if it's just that SGs don't normally come in green, but I was definitely drawn more to that than the red in person. And man, that satin open pore finish, it feels so much higher end than $379. It's definitely a great year to be an SG fan, because if you thought there were a lot on the modern side, there's even more on the original. Most of them red. In fact, most of the SG originals are what you'd expect from the new look Epiphone. The SG Standard and Standard 61 have both made their way over from the Gibson side. The 61 comes in vintage cherry, while the Standard comes in ebony, heritage cherry, and alpine white, which actually Gibson doesn't even offer. The differences between the two, not many. They've even got the same 60s slim taper profile. The 61 comes with ProBuckers, Epiphone Deluxe machine heads, and the smaller pickguard, whereas the Standard comes with Alnico Classics, Grovers, and the larger Batwing pickguard. So both those are $449, but for $549, you can get the 61 with a Maestro Vibrola. The Maestro Vibrola is such a funny thing. I kind of love it and kind of really don't. Maybe it'll be improved with the Graphtec nut, but on my G400, it doesn't stay in tune for and I really mean for I don't believe there is a single worst feature on the planet for if you want a guitar to stay in tune. But it does look really dope, especially after a few years when it's had the time to tarnish a little. The SG Special is also in the lineup in both sparkling burgundy and faded Pelham blue. The faded Pelham blue actually looks really good in person. Like, especially these solid sparkle finishes cover the headstocks, and just looking at them, it gets difficult to tell which is the Gibson and which is the Epiphone. The last SG in the original collection is the Custom. I did not see this one coming. but I love it. Mahogany body, slim taper mahogany neck, ebony fingerboard with block inlays, gold hardware, and gold reflector knobs. It's a Les Paul custom in SG form. It's a regular production model for $579. Yes, there were regular production models for the Firebird and the Flying V as well. That's great. For whatever reason, those were both missing from the core lineup the past year or so, or more. I don't know, I focus on Les Pauls. But yeah, like last year, if you wanted either of those two shapes from Epiphone, you had to go with special edition artist models, the Dave Rude Flying V or the Slash Firebird. Both cool guitars, don't get me wrong, but sometimes you just want the classics. So the Firebird is your super traditional vintage sunburst with mini humbuckers type thing. It's based off of the first iteration of the model released in 1963. Although the body does have the same shape and look of the Gibson version, this one has a set neck instead of neck through, though it looks like the body has been kinda shaved to replicate the same fret access. I'm sorry, I forgot to check it NAMM, I was too focused on the Les Paul Muses. Then while even the original collection Gibson is based on a more modern V, the Epi is based on a first year 58 in an ebony finish. Right, so it's got the larger pick guard, the output jack is all the way down on the lower horn, and it's got the massive string-through arrow plate after the bridge. I believe they actually made one like this in like 2008, but this one has all the updates like the CTS pots and GraphTech nut and stuff like that. I'm actually kind of surprised they didn't go with the super popular Carina reissues, but I don't think V fans are really going to be complaining. I mean, the V is back in the lineup in all its arrow-shaped glory. The semi-hollow and hollow body lineups have also been streamlined. I'm not really going to go over them though, because I don't know that much about them, and I don't feel like I've got anything to say besides they look nice, I guess. There's one that caught my eye from Epiphone's original collection though, and that's the Archtop Uptown Cat ES. It's apparently an updated version of the Wildcat, which I also don't know anything about, but I'll take their word for it. It's got mini pro buckers, a 5-ply maple poplar neck, ebony fingerboard with block inlays, and the old school bikini bottom Epiphone logo. But the finishes, it comes in emerald green metallic, ruby red metallic, sapphire blue metallic, and gold metallic. It's got a very subtle shine to it. It's not as bright as the Muse metallics. It's more vintage-y, and with the exception of the blue, the backs are all gold metallic. So you've got a classy two-tone look. It's nice. It's just very nice. So obviously, the headstock, it's a big talking point. After years and years of people complaining, they've changed it. But it's not just because people were complaining that they wanted it to be more Gibson-like. More so than ever, Epiphone is embracing its history. So they're calling this the Kalamazoo headstock. When Gibson bought Epiphone, they relocated from New York to Kalamazoo in 1958. So the new headstock is actually an older headstock. The 1986 Les Paul 1 I bought off Macari has it as well. So the headstock change is representative of like a change in identity. I've been arguing this for the past couple of years. Epiphone are not just budget guitars, they're the players' guitars that use Gibson designs. And with Grover tuners, GraphTech nuts, and CTS electronics, the two are closer than they've ever been. That being said, to be honest, I kind of really don't like the new headstock. I think it's super ugly, but I concede the point. It seems like I'm very much in the minority on this one. And a big reason why I like the old headstock so much is that's the Epiphone I grew up with, right? That was my first real guitar that I bought with my own money. That's the guitar I played my first show at a bar with. It's what I traveled with every year back and forth from the US to China with. Like, Gibson was always out of reach. Epiphone, represented by the headstock that everyone else seemed to hate, that was my go-to brand. So I understand the change, but I'm glad that my G400 and JGN both have the old one. That being said, I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments. A lot of fans were asking for change, but they wanted a direct copy of the Gibson open book, and this isn't exactly that. It's closer, but it's still got its own Epiphone flavor, and I'd love to know what you think about that direction. And overall, I mean, I tend to point out some things that I don't like, but the 2020 lineup, as a die-hard Epiphone fan, it's amazing. It makes more sense in the context of the overall Gibson lineup. It's more streamlined, it's more focused, and the functional updates make them finished articles instead of models you pick up with the intention of being mod platforms. Like before, generally, at the very least, you'd have to plan on swapping out the nut. Now, nah, even the $300 Junior has Grover, GraphTech, and CTS. Now, I guess as part of the streamlining process, if a model is no longer available on the official site, it's being phased out of production. So that means no more of those super cheap SLs or really bolt-ons in general. Right, that goes in line with Epiphone's shift away from the perception of being just a budget guitar line. But that means that if you want to pick up an inspired by 1955 Les Paul Custom, which which is one of my favorites I've ever had on the channel, with the dual P90s and pink plush hardshell case. This is probably your last chance. I mean, this is like a rebirth for Epiphone, and I might be getting ahead of myself, but I'm already excited for what else Epiphone is gonna do. Like, I was actually pretty surprised to not see that 3-pickup 1961 Les Paul Custom as part of the original collection. As much sentimental value as my 2006 version has, I'd be the first in line for one with an ebony board and modern build quality. Like in 2006, they still had some work to do, but I guess they're saving that for a launch next to like a 3-pickup Black Beauty, which would also be sick now that they come with ebony fingerboards. So yeah, as an Epiphone fan, as a Les Paul fan, as a fan of getting good value for my dollar, I am so pumped. The customs, muses, and classic worn in purple are my personal highlights. What about you? Epiphone fans, are you happy with this lineup? Is there anything else you wanted to see? And non-Epiphone fans, seeing this new direction and new lineup, are you thinking of maybe giving them a try this year? And then for demos, personally, I want to try them all because that's who I am, but there's so many I'm going to have to prioritize. Which ones do you want to see on the channel? More modern collection, more original collection, Les Pauls, more artist models? You know the drill. Poll in the top right. And before we get into the last question, I want to give a shout out to Brett Thomas and the rest of the amazing patrons for supporting what I do and making this content possible. If you like what I do with the honest reviews and commentary, you can join the Patreon community through the link below for bonus perks like MP3s and tabs for all the demo tracks. And now into the last question. Did you see the new Epiphone Prophecy series with Fluence pickups at NAMM? I can't find any info. Yeah, no, I didn't see them at NAMM and nobody's really talking about them. But thanks to Troy Perkins for linking me to an Andertons video with a sneak peek of those models. Looks like they were in a different room, so I'm not sure if anybody's actually supposed to talk about them. If Algin asks me to remove this, I will. But for now, Andertons did it. So the Prophecy series. Before the Muse series, the Prophecy series was like the example I always pointed to as Epiphone's main outlet for modern takes on classic Gibson shapes. The first generation released in 2009, 2008? I don't know, it was a while ago. So even though I talk about it a lot and how much I love it now, for a long time, I wasn't too sure if I liked my G400 Custom. It just didn't really chug. Like the palm mutes on my stock Squire Bullet Strat were so much crisper and chunkier. And me at the time, I didn't know anything about gear or whatever. I couldn't figure out why. I was like, oh, maybe SGs aren't good for metal. Maybe Epiphones just aren't that good. Turns out it was the crappy bridge or crappy bridge saddles. I'm not sure. I'd replace it with a Godo and put a massively high output pickup in the bridge, so now it's awesome. But the reason I even stuck with it, I was in a store and I was saying that my SG wasn't very good for metal, and the sales guy hands me this first generation Prophecy SG. Red quilted maple top, lightning bolt inlays, and he's like, here, try this. Plugged it in. Holy shit, it changed my entire outlook on Epiphones and SGs. Those Gibson Dirty Fingers ripped. But yeah, that SG is a pretty big reason why I stuck with Epiphone. Like in the Mirror universe, I never played that SG. I sold my Epi and became an Ibanez fanboy. But anyways, that line was refined in 2012. My dates are all off. Gear availability timelines are different in China, and even when I got to the US, I didn't really start paying attention to gear until I started the channel. So don't take my word on the exact year, but the point is that was the last update. The line really hasn't been touched for over half a decade. And while Les Paul with 24 frets, EMGs, and a satin neck might have been super progressive in 2012, it was starting to look a bit dated compared to other modern single cuts in 2020. This year, it looks like the Prophecies are coming back in full force. There's an Explorer, a V, an SG, and of course, a Les Paul, all with 24 frets, all with multiple colors and satin finishes on the entire guitar, not just the neck this time. It'll be interesting to see which colors match with which shape, like the blue or purple on the Explorer would look great on the Les Paul. Brushed chrome hardware and pickup covers, which matches real nicely with the satin finish. Contoured heel joint on the Explorer and kind of a bevel for easier access on the V. With the exception of the Les Paul, the controls have been simplified to just 2 knobs, presumably 1 volume, 1 tone, push-pull to switch voices and stuff. I love how they kept the Prophecy inlays from the last generation, the portaloid blocks with abalone triangles. Nice little nod to the legacy of the line. Epiphone actually asked me last year about a revamped Prophecy lineup. Now, I'm not taking credit for anything, but I will say that a couple of those bullet points I sent them did make it to these NAMM showings. Fishman Fluence, check. Blackburst finishes with bright colors to contrast the black, check. Access neck heel, check. Grover locking tuners, check. Ebony fingerboards, check. I mean, a few of those are common sense, but Let's see if Luminlays make the cut as well. Again, not taking credit for anything, but it's nice to see that Epiphone is on the same page when it comes to the strength and direction of the Prophecy series. It's kind of interesting to see no passive pickup options on display, and that's because the Prophecies have always had active and passive pickup options, like the Les Paul EX with EMGs and then the GX with Gibson pickups. So instead of going with Seymour Duncan's Sentient Pegasus or something like the direction of LTD, they've just dropped passive completely, opting for more finish options instead. I love the Fishman Fluent stuff. You've got the active and passive voices, so I don't see that as a problem. I'm interested to see what your reaction is, though. I know people love their passives. And just like LTD, EMG's gotten the boot. Yeah, I don't know what's going on with them, but poor EMG, man. Anyways, yeah, so far, no other press releases, no other videos from NAMM, and honestly, that lack of information is making me even more hyped. Like, as informative as the Andertons channel normally is, Lee isn't a metal guy at all, so they kind of just glossed over the Prophecies in under 2 minutes, and it's like, no dude, go back, go back. And equally as infuriating, that's not the only sneak peek tease that they had in this video. Andertons also got some quick shots of some new artist models. An Alex Lifeson Les Paul with a Graphtec Tremolo, Brendan Small with a Floyd-equipped Greyburst Explorer called the Ghost Horse, Nancy Wilson of Heart is getting some sort of signature model that the camera doesn't show. From the inlays and truss rod cover, I would assume it's an Epiphone version of her signature Gibson Nighthawk from a few years ago. Then there's a Goryo Yuto signature model in this sick blue quilt finish, stained blue back. Now I'm still trying to wrap my head around this thing. Not the model itself, it's like a modified Les Paul standard. There was a Gibson version a while back, but rather who it's for. So Goryo Yuto, he's not real. He's not a real person. He plays in a band called Argonavis, which exists only in a very popular Japanese, like an anime manga universe called Bandori. The English name is Bang Dream. Yeah, I don't know, either it doesn't translate very well or they didn't really think it through. Googling this was, well, let's just say the anime wasn't the first thing that popped up. But yeah, he's a fictional guitarist in a fictional band in a fictional world that plays a blue Les Paul standard. Totally bizarre. What a crazy crossover. I dig it. But anyways, back to the Prophecies. I think one of the big strengths of the Prophecies is that while they've had the modern features and everything, the aesthetic has always been a little more old school. These ones still have that Epiphone classiness, but are definitely sleeker looking than they've ever been. Like they're looking directly at LTD and going right for the throat. Man, I wish they were on the main show floor to check out in person. I mean, Epiphone already announced so much cool stuff, but these are the guitars for me. Like a Les Paul with brushed chrome Fishman Fluence Moderns. Yeah, I'll have one in every color, please. And they're Epiphones, so you know they'll be somewhat affordable and available worldwide. I cannot wait. But yeah, what do you think of the new Prophecies? Do you like the new colors? Do you like the new feature set? Any and all thoughts, I'd love to know. And now, of course, it is time to hear from yet another adoring fan. It's the high praise of the week. I hate you. You like the boring gray guitar and said the colorful one was ugly. Fuck you. Also, your voice is super dorky and annoying, so I turned off the sound and skimmed through the video. By the way, you're not funny or amusing. Oh man, it is good to be back. And that'll do it for this week's episode of AskGufish. If you enjoyed the video, do me a favor and hit the like button, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. That way you don't miss any new uploads. Feel free to leave your thoughts on anything discussed or your questions for future episodes in the comments. As always, thanks so much for watching. You've been awesome, and I'll see you for the next video.